My name is Tobin Hale, and for 6 winters I have trimmed the lamp-wicks in the throne hall of Queen Usliadoreth, and I want you to understand that I am telling you this story not because I am important, but because I was standing close enough to a very large problem with a very small tool in my hand, and nobody else was. The hall I tend is built around the Heartlight. It is not a lamp. It is older than the dynasty, a column of veined crystal sunk 3 levels into the rock beneath the throne, and it is the reason the city does not freeze during the long winter night, when the sun does not rise for 11 weeks and the wind off the ice fields could kill a man in an hour. The Heartlight warms the conduits under every street. It is why the glass houses still grow food in the dark months. Everyone in the city has warmed their hands at a grate fed by that engine and never once thought about it. The way you don't think about your own heartbeat until somebody tells you it's stopping. It started stopping on the 9th night of winter. I noticed before the engineers did because I am the one who walks the hall at first watch lighting the sconces, and the sconces are fed off the same old crystal lines as the Heartlight itself, and that 9th night they sputtered. Not went out. Sputtered, the way a lamp does when the wick's gone thin and ragged and isn't drawing properly anymore. I said something to the watch captain. He told me to mind my lamps. By the 11th night, the Heartlight's glow had dropped from gold to a sick, guttering orange, and the warmth in the lower wards had thinned enough that people were sleeping in their coats. The Queen summoned every engineer in 3 provinces. I watched them come up the long stair in their good coats, important men and women with instruments I couldn't name, and I watched them go back down it shaking their heads. They talked about resonance failure and crystal fatigue and core decay. Chancellor Oz Bellard, who runs the Queen's household and likes very much to be seen running it, stood at the engine room door and made sure every one of them reported to him first, before they reported to her. I don't think he understood the engine any better than I did. I think he understood that whoever fixed it would matter to the Queen for the rest of his life, and he intended that to be him, one way or another. I watched the Chancellor work the crisis the way some men work a crowd. He posted clerks at the engine room door to write down everything the engineers said before it reached the Queen, so whatever got fixed would be remembered as having passed through his hands first. He held meetings about meetings and sent runners announcing that he personally was overseeing the matter, true in the sense that he stood near it a great deal, false in every sense that mattered. I don't say this to make a villain of him. He wasn't cruel, only that he understood better than the engineers did that a dying engine is also an opportunity and meant to be standing closest to it whichever way the story broke. It meant nobody with real authority was looking anywhere near the floor of the hall where the actual trouble was. Nobody asked the boy who trims the wicks. I want to be honest about why I went down anyway, because it wasn't bravery. I went down because I'd spent 6 years learning exactly one thing, how flame behaves when it's starving, and I recognized the behavior. The sconces in my hall don't run on oil. They run on threads of crystal fiber that draw a slow trickle of light up from the deep lines, the same way a wick draws oil up through cotton, by nothing more than its own fine threads pulling close together. When a wick gets old, the threads mat down and clog with old burnt fuel, and the flame starves even though the oil reservoir underneath is still full. You don't fix that with theory. You fix it by trimming the wick back to clean thread by hand, a little at a time, until it can draw again. The Heartlight's feed crystal was 3 stories tall and built into the floor of the throne hall, and I had absolutely no business near it. I went down past the engine room at the 2nd watch, when the engineers had given up for the night, with my lamp-trimming knife and a stub of tallow candle in my coat pocket, because if I was going to look like a fool, I wanted at least to be able to see what I was looking at. The feed thread junction was matted black with 11 days of soot and slag, exactly the way a dying wick mats. I could see it plainly with my candle held close, the way I see it on every sconce in that hall every single night. Nobody else had looked at it close enough, with a small enough flame, because nobody else had spent 6 years learning to read a flame instead of a gauge. The watch captain caught me with my hand inside the access panel and hauled me out by the collar before I'd cleared more than a hand's width of it. And that, I'll admit, is where the story very nearly ends. A servant boy thrown out of the engine room at second watch, scolded, sent back to his sconces. The matter closed. It didn't close because the Queen herself came down not an hour later to see the failure with her own eyes, and the watch captain, trying to explain why a boy had been pulled out of the access panel, told her what I'd said about the soot and the threads. I expected to be punished. Instead, she asked to see my hands. I don't know what she expected to find on them. Soot, probably same as always. She looked at them for a moment, and then she asked me, very plainly, whether I believed I could clear it. I told her the truth, that I'd never cleared anything bigger than a sconcewick in my life, that I had no idea if the principle held at that scale, and that I would rather try and fail in front of her than not try and wonder forever. She told Chancellor Bellard to give me the access panel back. It took most of that night. There is no trick to it, no clever device, nothing the engineers hadn't already thought to bring. Only the same slow work I do every evening in the hall above, repeated for hours instead of minutes. Clearing matted thread back to clean fiber, a little at a time, testing the draw with the small flame of my candle stub held close enough to feel the pull of it against my palm, backing off when the flame guttered, going back in when it steadied. My hands cramped twice. I had to stop and warm them under my arms before I could feel the thread well enough to keep going. I half expected the Queen to send for someone with steadier hands and better letters after their name. She didn't. She watched the candle the way I watched it, like it was the only honest instrument in the room. And once, when the flame dropped to almost nothing and I went still, she went still too, and didn't speak until it caught again. The Queen stayed the whole time. She didn't hover or hurry me. She sat on an overturned crate in her winter coat like anyone else waiting out a long watch, and somewhere past the 4th hour she asked me what my mother had done for a living, and I told her my mother had kept the lamps in a fishing village before the fever took her, and that I supposed I'd learned it from watching her hands before I ever learned it as a job. The Queen said that explained something to her that the engineer's instruments hadn't. She asked nothing else after that. She let the silence sit the way you let a fire sit once it's drawing well, not poking at it, just trusting it to keep going on its own. The draw caught a little after dawn that doesn't come in winter. I felt it pull at my palm like a held breath let go, and the Heartlight came up slow and gold and steady, the way it's meant to. And somewhere above us, I heard the city's grates start ticking warm again one street at a time. Chancellor Bellard, to give him his due, didn't try to claim it. He'd run out of room to. The Queen had been sitting on a crate beside me the whole night. There wasn't a version of the story left for him to rewrite. What she offered me afterward wasn't a title or a seat at her table, she asked, I think, because she'd watched me work and understood by then what I actually wanted. She offered me the engine room itself, keeper of the Heartlight, with the standing of any royal engineer and none of the ceremony, free to tend it the same plain way I tend my sconces, for as long as I cared to. I said yes. Not because of the honor of it, though I won't pretend that didn't matter, but because for 6 years I'd loved the patient, ordinary work of keeping small flames alive in the dark. And for the first time somebody with the power to give me anything had simply asked what I was good at, and let that be enough. I still trim my own candle stub down by hand every week rather than buy a new one. The engineers found that strange at first. The Queen never did.